Hello and welcome back to Language Sofa podcast. This week I'm joined by Aurélie Lethuilier, who is a head of department for an MFL department in Kent in a secondary school. And she's also worked closely with the Sentence Builder books, along with many other projects beyond that. So, Aurélie, thank you for joining me here on Language Sofa. So, I know you're an experienced language teacher and head of department as well.
Mm-hmm. That's correct, yes.
Yeah. So, and obviously you're involved in lots of projects beyond the classroom as well. But what I'd love to know is what made you initially become a teacher?
Well, the funny thing is, when I was still in France at the time, I had no intention whatsoever of being a teacher ever. I was thinking of either being a vet or being in the army, believe it or not.
Okay.
So, that was a bit of a jump. Yes, it's only when I did my first school trip to England when I was in year 9 at the time
Okay.
that I really, really fell in love with the language. And I thought, okay, I want to do languages. And not because, at the time, I would hope that things have changed nowadays. But the way I was taught languages in France at the time was very textbook, basically. It was,
Okay.
open your book, read, and then complete the task. Okay. My first speaking ever was when I was in year 13.
Okay.
But I had never done any speaking until then,
Hmm.
apart from the a language assistant. And I was in Leicester for a year. And then I was in Hampshire for my second year. And because I worked with all these amazing and enthusiastic teachers, and the schools where I was in Leicester were not the easiest by far. But when I saw those teachers, what they conveyed to the pupils and how the pupils responded, in my head, I was like, right, that's what teaching is about, isn't
Yeah.
it? Is having that communication. And because I knew I wanted to be in languages somehow, and I didn't really want to live in France anyway, so I thought, you know what? I think that's what I want to do because I think I can actually do this. Because
Mm.
to me, it was such a massive difference with the way I was taught in France. And that spoke to me, the way languages were, taught here, that communicative approach, etc., etc. But
Yeah.
even that relationship between the students and the teachers. And so that's what made me become actually a teacher, is to witness amazing teachers out there and their contact with the student.
Yeah. No, so actually seeing it in practice kind of inspired you to do it. And it's
Yes.
like you said, like I've witnessed teaching in Spain when I went to school in Spain when I was younger, and it was like a teacher just dictating and just reading, and I had to keep up with
Mm.
it, and that was considered teaching. I was like, wow. So maybe that's why I never thought of being a teacher, because I was like, if that's what teaching is, then that's it doesn't
Yeah,
there's no connection, there's no like
exactly.
actual what you would consider real teaching. It's just
Yeah.
yeah. So that's interesting. So your experience over here at that point really inspired you. So that's very interesting. So
Mm.
you're of course I've been teaching with EPI for a few years now across a couple of different schools, and I understand for you as well. I think you do you use EPI methodology in your department in your school.
Yes, we do. So that's across the department. And I have to say, because I have been very, very lucky to always work with absolutely fantastic teachers who are very open-minded.
Yeah.
But when I started, I really, started EPI. It was by pure luck because I had never heard of it before. And it's only when I was, starting going onto Facebook and Twitter at the time, that I heard about, some people, talking about the Conti method and this and that. And some comments were positive and some comments were negative. And I thought, oh, do you know what? Let's look into this because,
Yeah.
when you get a reaction like that, there's
Well,
something behind
yeah.
it.
Anything that's dividing opinion like that is doing
Exactly.
something, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I started looking into it and I thought, you know what, at the time, because I didn't know anything about it, I had a lovely year 8 group, but you could see languages were not their thing. They just didn't want to do it. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try some of the activities that I have seen and read about. And, within 1 or 2 lessons, you could see that shift in the students. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And, when then the following lesson they came in and they said, what do you have for us today, miss? What are we doing today? And I was like, do you know what? I think we're onto something here.
Oh, good.
So
Yeah.
I tried, like lots of different things for about a year before I actually said to my department, look, come and observe those lessons, okay? See the difference with this group, what they were like back in September and what they are like now. Because it was, I think, completely different girls. I mean, I teach in a girls' school, but completely different girls in front of me. And that's how I started rolling it out to the department. But it was, a really big team effort as well, because do you know what? At the end of the day, it was new for everybody. And some of my most experienced teachers could just have turned around and said, look, do you know what, Aurélie? That's not really for us. No, not at all. They saw what it did. They saw how engaged the students became, and they just wanted to do it as well. So, it was trial and errors to start
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
I did I can't remember how many CPDs now, that was then passed on to the department. And we've really, really improved. So at Key Stage 3, we're very happy with what we've done. We've got a solid scheme of learning in place. We've got solid resources as well. We've got the languages books as well. And even when the department changed, because, people moved on, either went back to Spain or France or got promoted somewhere else, it was nice to see some of my also previous trainees coming back to see what we had put in place.
That's great.
And that was,
Yeah.
to me, it was very rewarding. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And now with my new department, they are absolutely amazing. And I mean, I've got Abby and Elsa, who I've been working with for a while now, but again, very open, very, very keen. And I've got two new ones as well. So Renee, who is from Jamaica, and who had never done EPI, and yet she came in really open-minded and she's embraced it.
Yeah.
And I've got an ECT as well, Beatrice, who didn't really do it during her training. And, she welcomed it with open arms, and everybody is on board. Everybody's loving it. We are beginning now to implement it at Key Stage 4. But, with the new GCSEs, trying to get our heads around it,
Yeah.
how much do you cover? How much time do you spend on it? It's a little bit more challenging,
Yeah.
but we'll get there in the end, definitely. But yes, so everybody's embraced it. And we got some very positive comments as well from Ofsted. So they came not last September, but the one before that.
All right. That's incredible.
Yes. And our lead Ofsted inspector, she was an MFL teacher. And when she saw what was going on, so we were lucky to be deep dived.
Yeah. Yeah. No, of course.
And when she saw, she said to us that it was it was an innovative curriculum, challenging but innovative. And she really, really enjoyed that. She said it was very ambitious as well. And I was thinking, you know what? That's ticking my boxes.
Yeah.
That is so rewarding to have that sort of
Absolutely.
comments. Yes.
So
Absolutely.
I think one of the key things you're saying about is the open-mindedness of teachers. And I think that is really necessary, because sometimes, like you said, it does divide opinion, and it's things like that, because it is something new, it's something different. It's
Yes.
like it's like it's a different option, isn't it, for people to teach from. So I think the open-mindedness of teachers is absolutely essential in that.
Yes.
And I think that's really interesting, getting that feedback from Ofsted on it. And
Yes.
because obviously that's like, oh yeah, it's recognized. I think it's just so clear. It's so clear when you can explain it and you can articulate it so easily by saying this is a sequence. It's a sequence of learning, as opposed to a journey within one lesson, which is completely unrealistic, which is how we were all
Yeah.
initially thinking, oh, it had to be, oh yeah, by the end of the lesson you have to be able to blah blah blah, whereas really it's a sequence. But yeah, I kind of, at my old school where I was head of department there, we we had Ofsted, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, it's like these are, I wanted them to kind of come into MFL, but we received the call as soon as we landed on our school trip. We touched down in Barcelona, and the school received the call, the Ofsted calls. We were like, oh my gosh, what have we done? But we're like, oh, but we're in Barcelona, so it's kind of like, swings and roundabouts. So um, we
Yeah.
missed it. So we missed
Oh,
Ofsted. They were there for that time, and we're in Barcelona. So we're like, wow, we felt a tiny
yes.
bit bad. But at the same time, we
Oh,
were quite comfortable. If we would have had a deep dive on it, we were very confident, because it explains itself almost, doesn't it? EPI and the methodology. So
and
um,
that's what matters.
yeah.
Yes.
So no, thanks. That's really
Absolutely.
interesting.
Yes.
And I love that you're so proud of your department. I think that's so nice to hear. It sounds like you've got a great group of teachers around
Oh,
you.
they
So
are. I'll tell you what, they are amazing. I've told them that they're not allowed to leave.
no, absolutely. No, of course, keep hold of them. No, for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, so what would you say the difference is between EPI and other methods that you might have seen before, or how you taught before? What changed? What is so different about it, would you say?
Well, do you know what? I think because I was trained, using the what I would call the traditional method,
Hmm.
of teaching. And I think it's when I had my son actually that I realized that if you speak to your child in the target language, so for me that would be French, for instance,
Hmm.
it's all about communication. And that's how he picked it up.
Hmm.
So, for instance, if I said to him, I don't know, say, hier, j'ai mangé un croissant, I was not going to, I mean, he would be exposed to that perfect tense without me going through how to form the perfect tense
Yeah.
because he was far too young to
I
do
mean,
that, you
yeah,
know.
absolutely.
And the thing is, at the end of the day, he would be able to pick up on those structures
Yeah.
without me going through it as such
Yeah.
and being able to say, even short sentences, depending on how old he was, but by doing it like this. And I was thinking, do you know what? There must be a way to do it as well in the classroom. And that's actually maybe like a year later, that's when I
Oh,
bumped into
yeah.
the EPI. So it all came together at that point, me having my son and then, bumping into EPI. And I thought, you know what, that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
And then when you see, like, compared to, again, like, the traditional method, the progress that some of our students have made and how much more confident they are in using the language without going heavy on the grammar part to start with, because you want just to, immerse them in those
Mm.
structures, in that language, that key vocabulary, etc., etc. And we've had comments as well from parents, and that have said to us, do you know what? If we had been taught languages the way you're teaching them now, it would have been, a different
Yep,
story.
absolutely. I notice get that so often at parents' evening when you go, I
Yes.
wish I'd have studied proper, but he had, oh, I learned from a boring vocab list that I had to memorize by the next week, and that was it. And I had a teacher who just, didn't engage, and
Yes.
yeah, you always get the same feedback.
You do, don't you?
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. So to us, it's so nice to hear that, and and you can see that they are actually picking up, the sentences. Like today, it was something silly, but with my year 8, I was saying a sentence, and instead of saying comma or whatever, I was saying virgule. And they
mm,
just looked at me and they said, "Oh, when you say virgule, does it mean comma?" Without me even
yeah,
saying what virgule was, So
yeah,
they're not able to actually pick up extra
yeah,
words and make
exactly.
sense of them
Yeah,
just, through the context, etc., etc.
uh,
So it does, work. I
yeah,
mean, obviously, like we said earlier on, you've got to have, you have to be open-minded and you have to be prepared, to change what you
mm,
do.
mm.
But it is rewarding,
Because the
definitely, and
automatic thing to go to is when you start teaching to teach a little bit how you were taught and what your
Mm,
perception is of teaching, isn't it? Whereas I'm like same
yes,
as me, I'm a
absolutely.
parent. It's like you start thinking, would I teach my child like that? Did my child learn English in that way? Like no, like no one, and I didn't. It's an implicit learning way, isn't it? Rather than,
Exactly. Yes.
I think that helps so much. I think it's actually real. It's actually real communication as opposed to just you know actually like who is engaged and excited by conjugations. Like although we have to do it,
Yeah.
it's not communicate. You can't communicate through conjugating the verb to have, can you? You know what
No,
I mean? So
exactly. And you know what? It's when the students pick that up, for instance, like in Spanish, if you say tengo, they understand that, yes, okay, it's the I form. You don't have to go like, tener, and it's
yeah,
tengo, tienes, tiene.
yeah, yeah,
They will know by repetition and different, activities that
yeah,
tengo means I have.
yeah. By putting it into practice, isn't it? That's that.
Exactly.
By
Yes.
making it applicable, and that's what
Mm,
I really got from it as well. And you
mm,
notice it in the classroom, don't you? You don't even have to teach certain words. They're just there and they figure it out. And oh, okay, that's part of that. And yeah,
exactly.
it's
Yes.
amazing. It's amazing. I find the impact. That's really cool.
Mm,
Really cool. So we're on the same page with that one. So
definitely.
yeah, so with that, I know, like you said, around your teaching, your department. Sorry, it's really
Mm.
positive, and everyone's on, you know, on the same wavelength. But do you find MFL in general in your school has a positive feel around it? Is it due to EPI or other factors as well?
Do you know what I think? I mean, my head, Hilary, she is amazing, and she's very much into languages because she did her A level in French. You see, so
Okay.
she knows what it's like, to learn languages. She's got that massive open mind. Not once has she said to me, "Oh, you can't use that methodology or that approach. You've got to change it," and etc. etc. She can see that our students are highly motivated.
Hmm.
They're very much engaged in our lessons. Our uptake at GCSE has increased. I mean, we used to have like 2 groups. Now we are up to 4 groups.
That's brilliant.
So obviously we'd like to have more, but we are a school that offers such a wide range of options that sometimes it's difficult for the students to make a choice.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, our results have increased as well. They're
Mm.
consistently good. And where we are a non-selective school, but surrounded by grammar schools.
Hmm.
And yet, we are still, the second best non-selective school in Kent. So it just proves to show,
There
like,
you go.
we are a school. And when you have an SLT that's behind you as well and supports you all the way, it
Yeah,
does make a massive difference. Because
absolutely.
sometimes, it saddens me sometimes when you read, like some comments on Facebook or on
Hmm.
X that says, oh, I have just been informed that next year we're not running German, or next year
Yeah,
we're not
yeah,
running this language.
yeah,
Find that a little bit upsetting, because one, that communication has not happened, and
yeah.
two, where is the support?
Wow,
So
exactly.
so I am blessed to be working in a school where there's always been that support regarding languages.
Yeah,
And us being in Kent as well, it's so easy to just go across the channel to France, and then also, because we're like 45 minutes from Gatwick, so we can
exactly.
easily get on a plane and off to Spain we go.
Exactly. You're not far from Essex, where I am either.
Yeah.
If that's a positive, I don't know.
Oh, of course it is. Almost like the same border here, Ben.
No, for sure. Yeah, so obviously, like on as a bigger picture, I want to get your opinion on this. So there's obviously big questions around constant changes in MFL guidance around teaching in the UK, the NSELP, NCLE, whatever
Mm.
combinations of those letters they keep trying to do. Obviously, exam changes and pressures and all that stuff. What would you say is the biggest challenge facing us right now, from your perspective, like in the classroom or beyond that?
Yeah, I think at times, I'm thinking sometimes it's the lack of hours that we have,
Yeah.
especially at Key Stage 3. Because if we are realistic, if you want to really prepare, because even though they have changed the GCSE, I personally feel that it's as heavy going content wise as the previous one. I mean,
Hmm.
things have been moved around, but it's still quite heavy.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just working out the logistic of, how many lessons do we spend on this topic and that topic? Because really, if you really want to go and look at the cultural aspects of the language, not just how to speak the language,
Hmm.
I don't think that we have enough time. And again, in my school, we are lucky because we get 5 hours of teaching a fortnight at Key Stage 3, apart from year 9.
Hmm.
But in some schools, it's half that time
Yeah.
that they get.
Yeah.
So, and it's
It's just
how do because
impossible. It's impossible,
it
isn't it? You
is.
can't, there's no way you can teach a language or learn a language in that time.
No, because and especially at that age, kids forget very quickly what you have
Yeah.
said to them. So, and that's what I found with EPI, and that's what I like, is that I but that's personally feel that the rate of forgetting the vocabulary is much slower
Mm.
because of all those like different tasks for to recycle the language, and because we use always also that those non-negotiable, like the time phrases, the
Mm.
quantifiers, etc., etc. So the students remember them quite nicely. But I would say, yes, definitely at Key Stage 3, I think that's a massive hurdle for all of us.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I do feel for primary school teachers, so when you have primary schools that can afford to have a specialist in a language coming in and teaching those young people, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But if they don't, and they ask their class teacher, who might not be specialist in languages at all, to teach,
Mm.
I really feel for them, because they're trying to do their best with
Yeah.
little knowledge of the language, and therefore when they come into year 7 afterwards, we have to sometimes pick up what's been done, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel like maybe if we had more time to work with primary schools,
Mm.
I think that would make a massive difference too.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, because I think what's not considered with that, the time constraints as well, is they're picking up a brand new subject, something
Mm.
that they really haven't done in like by year seven, because of that lack of input at primary, but not for any fault of any of the teachers,
No, not at all.
but they like they consider it like another subject, like if you consider another kind of option subject, they would have
Mm.
had some prior exposure to something that would set them up for it. Whereas languages, it's brand new, or everything we're teaching them in year seven is absolutely brand new. So
Yeah,
once a week, it's it's not going to get there, is there? Even I mean, we have twice a week, which is that's fairly
right.
standard. But it's again, it's like it's having that constant exposure to it is actually what gets it, isn't it? So
Exactly.
it's a very tricky task, I think, to get them to the point,
It is.
and also trying to come away from going, we are just teaching to the exam, we're just getting them to the point of the exam, because that's 50% or less than of the purpose of learning a language, right? It's
Yeah.
like we've got to do that, but really it's a massive life skill. So
It is. It is. Yes. And sometimes I wish that we could do more that is not just, linked to the exam, that
yeah,
just like, do things outside of the box, really.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
think that, that would engage even more students
yeah,
to actually do languages. But sometimes, you just have to turn around and say, sorry, but we only have
yeah,
X amount of lessons
yep.
and you
you
have to
got
make a
you
choice.
got yeah, exactly. So that's where
Mm.
I think EPI then works within it, because it engages and it kind of does both things, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It serves
Yes.
both purposes.
Mm.
So yeah, within your teaching career, which is it's been sounds really interesting and varied, and have you had any moments where you thought this is really worth it, and I've chosen the right career path, and I'm making a difference?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I mean, do you know what? Sometimes, some of the comments from the students. I mean, for me, it's when they are in the classroom and they are excited to come into your lesson. Okay,
Hmm.
because they don't know. I mean, one lesson from another is always different, and we try to use a variety of activities as well, just to keep the interest
Yeah.
going. And so many times when you have them coming in and say, "Oh, can we do the sentence stealer today? Or can we do this activity or that
Hmm.
activity?" Then you're thinking, do you know what? We've done something right here. But also, when we've had, and I'm thinking of, one particular student that in her PPEs, when she was in year 11, she got a grade 2 in the PPEs. And you would think, oh my goodness, but then by putting things in place and EPI related as well,
Mm.
we her results in her GCSEs was a 5.
Yeah.
So do you know what? So from
Look at that.
November
Yeah.
to May, June, when she did her GCSE, she went from a 2 to a 5. We're talking 3
Yeah.
grades.
Yeah.
That is massive,
Mm.
massive improvement. So it's like that, lots of little things like that, having the students
Yeah.
coming to see you and saying, oh, during the holiday, I'm going to go to France or
Hmm.
Spain,
Yeah.
and I'm going to take my book with me so I can use the sentence builder to say this.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's little things like this that to me, says it all.
Absolutely.
And that's what to me makes a massive difference. And you think, you know what? All that work, all that preparation was
Yeah.
absolutely worth it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely worth it. And there was one kid once who saw on one of my books, one of the books, that my name was on it.
Yeah.
And she said, "Is this you, Miss?" And I went, "Yes." And she said, "Oh my God, I'm getting that book." And actually, she came the following week and she had
Amazing.
actually bought the book, and it was for the revision for GCSEs. And you know
Yeah.
what? For this student as well, that made a massive difference. So
Yeah.
it's little things like that,
Yeah.
but yes, it is very rewarding
You
at the end
probably
of the
find
day.
as well. I find a lot of people say, "Oh, like teaching seems really hard, especially in secondary." But I always
Mm,
say to them, like, there's something good that happens every single day. There's always
yes.
something that you go, oh, that is so worth it. And or it's an interaction, or someone does something, a good bit of work, or says, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that was worth it. That just makes it worth it. And I find almost every day that there's obviously there's really challenging things,
Mm,
but that's what you're there for. You're there to shape them as well, aren't you? But
yes.
I always find there's something that makes you go, oh yeah, this is worth it.
That is exactly, there's not one day when I go home and think, what else could I do instead of teaching? No, no,
Yeah.
no. To me, it's just, and it's just because you get that reaction from
Hmm.
all these teenagers. And we all know, teenagers are not easy at times.
No.
Okay, you've got that. Oh, all the hormones flying around and everything.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's just the way that they interact with you and how they appreciate all the hard work that you're putting
yeah,
for them. Because that's
yeah.
the one thing that they notice as well. The one question I get all the time is, where do you get those resources from? And I said, well,
Hmm.
I create them myself. I don't use a textbook per se. I just
Hmm.
create them myself based on
Yeah,
what you like, what you enjoy. And that makes a massive difference. They really appreciate
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And obviously, things I like hearing about as well. Is there been any funny moments or outstanding funny moments that you've gone, wow, that's a bit lost in translation or something?
Oh gosh, yeah. One funny thing for me was because the kids know that I'm from France, even though they all think that I'm from Spain. I think it's because of the dark hair. They think, I'm from Spain. I'm like, no, 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 I'm from France. Just look at the surname.
Yeah,
And
like I'm not Aurelia, no soy Aurelia.
exactly, and just listen to the accent. You'll pick that up as well. But so some of the students thought that I was coming to work every day by helicopter because
Oh,
they didn't think that I was living in Britain, so they thought I was, traveling like that every day. But
wow.
then there was once a little year seven, and it was my first year of teaching as a proper qualified teacher. And, he could hear that some of the kids, because I was working in a very challenging school at the time, and he could see that there were some words that I was not picking up, like the kids were saying some like bad words. So this child, bless him, came back the following day, and I kid you not, with an A4 page of all the possible swear words in English.
Oh my word.
And he said to me, he said, look, miss, this is for you because as a language teacher, I'm sure you'll be interested to find out that there are some words you're not familiar with yet.
Wow, I tell you what, that is actually really kind.
And I thought, oh, I thought that is so sweet actually, because then I
Wow.
could pick up on those words. But you know what? Sometimes I wish I had written like all these like funny moments that
Yeah,
have
yeah.
happened, in the lesson, like, all these little comments, or even, in the speaking exam, when you try not to laugh because you realize when the student in front of you realizes what they've just said. Like, for
Yeah,
example,
yeah.
I had once that said that she wanted to drink countryside instead of champagne, so because he just got confused between champagne and
Oh my
champagne
God.
and
Yeah.
all that. She looked at me with that big smile, thinking, "Oh God, no, that's not what I wanted to say." But it's
Oh,
little
it's
things
those
like
moments.
that,
It's those
and it's
moments.
just brilliant.
Yeah.
But you know what? You just don't. And I wish I had written them down as I went along, because if you have a
Yeah.
bad day, then you just have to look at that and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like put a smile on your face again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So no, those moments are just priceless. Apart from the speaking
absolutely.
exams when everyone's going to play football in the park with their friends at the weekend, obviously the standard thing. Answer to any question. What did you do last night? I played football in the park with my friends. Of course you did.
Yes. Yeah, but you know what? My year 10 Spanish now, because they know that I love churros.
Yeah.
I don't know, like Senorita Lethuilier, she loves churros.
There you go.
And off. So now they're trying to put those churros in every sentence that
Yeah.
we have.
Amazing. Look at that.
And
No,
why
that's yeah,
not?
yeah. No, that's great. No, so obviously, what one last question I'd like to ask you is what one change would you like to see that could transform languages and the way they're taught in the UK?
I think would be more work between schools.
Okay.
Because we, for instance, if I'm looking at the GCSE, we are all teaching like either AQA or Pearson and Excel,
Hmm.
and yet we are all preparing separately, if you see
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit of a shame, because the resources could be shared,
Yeah. Wider. Yeah. Yeah.
even with, exactly, yes, and even with local schools, it could be a matter of saying, right, if your school prepares, say, theme one, and we prepare theme two, and this school will prepare
Hmm.
theme three. And I'm just thinking, if all of that was then put together,
Yeah.
we would all be, on the same page as well.
No. Yeah. I
Um,
completely agree. Yeah. I think collaboration is really key.
yes,
Even with like a lot of schools don't even collaborate within departments, and I think that's something I've not really noticed. Like, especially at my new school, the collaboration between them, it's all shared, and I think that's so good. It lightens the workload for everyone. You come
yes,
up with different ideas that you wouldn't necessarily thought of, and I think that's it's so important. Collaboration is really really key.
yes,
Um,
100%.
so yeah, no, it's really really good. I completely agree with everything you're saying. So that's
Oh,
brilliant. But No, but I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on here today, and for your contribution to this, and obviously to the world of languages and what you're contributing to is absolutely brilliant, and you really are making a difference.
No,
So
thank you
thank
very
you.
much. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
No, it's been great. So no, thanks for coming on Language Sofa.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
See
Take
you
care.
later. All right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Language Sofa Podcast. Merci beaucoup de m'avoir parlé et d'avoir partagé vos expériences, Aurélie. So thank you everyone for listening, and I look forward to tuning in next time. Au revoir.